I never imagined my life would come to this point. There were days not long ago when I used to wake up with the sunrise, stretch out in the comfort of my tiny apartment, and believe that somehow everything was manageable. The morning smelled of coffee, the air hummed with traffic from the streets below. And I told myself I was young enough, strong enough, and stubborn enough to keep pushing forward. But time has a way of unraveling even the strongest threads. All it takes is one missed payment, then another. And suddenly the roof over your head feels less like shelter and more like a fragile piece of glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. For me, that glass cracked with every envelope shoved under my door. Unpaid rent. Late notices. A number circled in red at the bottom of each letter, larger every month. It was as if the numbers weren't just amounts of money, they were weights tied to my chest, dragging me deeper into a place I swore I'd never fall. 3 months behind. No savings left. No family to lean on. No one picking up the phone when I called. Every day was a game of survival, but it wasn't the kind you win with strength. It was the kind you win with endurance, with silence. With pretending you're okay when inside you're already drowning. That's when the knock came. It was heavy, deliberate, and slow. Not the playful rhythm of a friend, not the hurried tap of a delivery driver. It was a sound that announced authority, finality, inevitability. The kind of knock you hear when time has run out. My stomach twisted before I even opened the door. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I already knew Mr. Lucas. He wasn't just the landlord. He was the figure people whispered about in the building's hallways, the man whose patience wore thin, whose smile never reached his eyes, whose rules weren't written on paper but enforced in ways no one dared question. Older than me by at least 20 years. Sharp in his suits, deliberate in his movements. He carried the kind of confidence that made others shrink without a word being spoken. When I pulled the door open, I clutched my robe tightly around me as though that thin fabric could shield me from the reality standing outside. His eyes flickered over me, calm and unreadable, and then settled firmly on mine. "Eva," he said, his voice smooth, heavy with certainty. "We need to talk." The way he said my name made my chest tighten. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to remind me of the months I hadn't paid. Every syllable carried the weight of all that silence, all those overdue notices, all my unspoken fear. "I know," I whispered. I need more time." But time was the one thing he was not offering. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and the click of the door shutting behind him sounded final, like a verdict being read. He didn't look around my apartment the way most people would. He didn't glance at the dishes in the sink, the stack of unopened bills, or the empty shelves. He didn't need to. He already knew everything he needed to know. "You've had time," he said evenly. 3 months of it. More than most people would have given you. "I've been trying," I said quickly, my words spilling out like water from a cracked glass. "I picked up shifts. I've sold everything I could. He raised a hand, silencing me without a single harsh word. That was the thing about Mr. Lucas's power, wasn't in shouting. It was in the quiet, the pauses, the calmness that left no room for argument. "You're out of options," Kay said simply. And in that moment I realized he was right. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. I clutched my robe tighter as if I could pull myself together by sheer force. My heart was pounding so hard I wondered if he could hear it. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally, a voice breaking despite my effort to hold it steady. That was when his expression shifted, not a full smile, but the ghost of one, tugging slightly at his lips. His eyes held mine with a weight that made me want to look away, though I couldn't. "There are always other ways," he said softly. The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore, impossible to push aside. My stomach turned. I knew what he meant. He didn't have to spell it out. His tone, his gaze, the silence between us, they carried the meaning clear enough. I froze. My breath caught. The world around me seemed to shrink until it was just him and me and the unbearable suggestion hanging between us. "I can't," I whispered. Though the words lacked conviction, he stepped closer, his presence filling the room, steady and unshakable. "You can," he said. "And you will if you want to keep this place. If you want the debt to disappear, no one else has to know. It stays between us." The robe in my hands felt like it was slipping. The walls pressed closer. The silence screamed louder. I don't know," I stammered. His eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained calm. "Think carefully, Eva. You said you've tried everything. This is the last option. Take it, and you'll breathe again. Refuse, and—" He let the sentence trail off, unfinished. But the ending was clear. Eviction. Homelessness. Another fall into the abyss. My throat tightened. My pride screamed at me to refuse. My fear begged me to consider. And somewhere deep inside, my exhaustion whispered the truth. I was out of choices. When I nodded small, barely perceptible. But real something in the air shifted. Mr. Lucas's eyes softened just slightly, as though this outcome had been inevitable all along. "You'll see," he murmured. "It won't be as hard as you think." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights blur against the glass, replaying the moment in my head again and again. The nod, the choice, the silence that followed. I told myself it was just one time, one sacrifice, one night in exchange for breathing room, for survival. But deep down, I already knew once you open a door like this, you can never truly close it again. The next morning, he returned. Calm as always, measured, precise. He carried a small envelope and placed it on my table without ceremony. When I opened it, my hands trembling, I saw bills stacked thicker than I'd ever held in my life. Enough to cover the rent and more. Enough to ease the weight that had been crushing me for months. But money isn't always freedom. Sometimes it's chains. "You did well," he said, as though I'd completed a task. His eyes held mine. "And you can do better. There are men I know, wealthy men, who would pay a great deal for someone like you. If you want more than survival, Eva. If you want comfort, stability, maybe even power. This is the way." My chest tightened. My instinct screamed no. But then my eyes fell on the money. The relief I had felt. The hunger that had eased even briefly. My mind swirled with conflict. "What kind of men?" I asked quietly. His smile returned thin, deliberate, satisfied. "The kind who always get what they want, Kate." And just like that, another line appeared in the sand. Another choice heavier than the last. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But the memory of those bills, of the hunger, of the fear, I couldn't escape it. So I nodded again. That was how it began. At first it was dinners. Meetings in expensive restaurants where laughter echoed louder than conscience. Smiles exchanged across candlelight. Promises wrapped in silk. I played the role expected of me, each moment feeling both unreal and irreversible. Then came the nights, long, quiet, and heavy with secrets. Each time I told myself it was the last. Each time I told myself I was in control. But control is a fragile illusion. The truth was, I was becoming a passenger in my own life, carried along by choices that didn't feel like mine anymore. The money grew. My apartment transformed. Bills disappeared. Neighbors looked at me differently, wondering how a struggling girl had suddenly become untouchable. I smiled at them, but inside I was sinking deeper, because every night, when the world grew quiet, I heard Mr. Lucas's voice in my head. Soft, persuasive, undeniable. "This is the way." And the more I listened, the more I wondered if he was right. But the truth is that survival has a price. And sometimes that price is more than you can ever repay. And for me, this was only the beginning.